The peculiar case of Roya Nikkhah's unshakable Harry fixation. There's something profoundly telling about a journalist who makes their entire professional identity about trashing someone while simultaneously clinging to the memory of having once been in their orbit. And Roya Nikkhah is the poster child for this bizarre phenomenon. She's built a cottage industry on daily character assassinations of Harry, positioning herself as the arbiter of his thoughts, feelings, and lived experiences, gaslighting him with the audacity of someone who genuinely believes she understands his life better than he does. And yet, there she sits with that profile picture, frozen in time, capturing the moment she interviewed him, like some sort of digital shrine to what once was. It's the behaviour of scorned lovers, really, these royal correspondents who will not move on because Harry committed the ultimate betrayal. He chose his wife and child, overfeeding their insatiable need for access and control. They'd constructed an entire fantasy where Harry would eventually see reason, dump the American actress, and come crawling back to play their game by their rules. Because that's how sick and twisted this whole ecosystem is. One of them even let the mask slip entirely, admitting to having had a crush on Harry, which explains the volcanic rage directed at Meghan for having the audacity to exist, to be chosen, to take him away from these people who never had him in the first place, but somehow felt entitled to him anyway. Roya Nikkhah's inability to move on from Prince Harry. What's particularly telling about Roya Nikkhah's behaviour is the way she's completely unable to let go of Harry, even years after their professional relationship ended. She trashes him on the daily, lobbing criticism after criticism his way, despite the fact that he's made it crystal clear he's done with the royal rota system. And yet, and this is the part that really says it all, she keeps a profile picture of herself interviewing Harry from years ago, like some kind of trophy she can't bear to put away. It's honestly pathetic when you think about it. Here's someone who claims to be a serious journalist, but she's so stuck in the past that she can't even update her own photo to reflect her current work. She refuses to accept that the professional relationship is over, that Harry has moved on and built a life that doesn't include feeding stories to people like her. Instead of doing what any normal person would do, accepting reality and finding new subjects to cover, she's chosen to remain fixated, continuously dragging his name through the mud as if that'll somehow bring back the access she once had. It's the behaviour of someone who got left behind and simply cannot cope with that fact. The audacity of rewriting someone's reality. Roya Nikkhah embodies the textbook gaslighter. She literally contradicts Harry's own accounts of his lived experiences, as if she was somehow present in rooms where she wasn't, privy to conversations she never heard, and able to feel emotions that weren't hers to claim. She insists her version of events is the only truth, positioning herself as the supreme arbiter of Harry's life story. Because apparently being a royal correspondent grants you the magical ability to know someone's inner world better than they know it themselves. She dismisses Harry's feelings and perspectives as invalid, with the casual cruelty of someone who genuinely believes that her interpretation of his reality matters more than his actual reality. It's the ultimate power play. You didn't experience what you experienced, you don't feel what you feel, and I, someone who has never walked a day in your shoes, will tell you what actually happened in your own life. The sheer arrogance is breathtaking, really, this notion that a journalist's narrative supersedes a person's lived truth, as if Harry's memories and traumas are merely rough drafts waiting for her editorial approval. The delusional fantasy of royal correspondence. What's truly astounding is the sheer audacity of these royal correspondents, who somehow convinced themselves that Harry owed them something, that he would actually prioritize his career in media over his own flesh and blood. They genuinely believed he would choose press relationships over his wife and child, as if schmoozing with journalists at Kensington Palace briefings was somehow more important than protecting his family from the same toxic machine that hounded his mother to her death. This demonstrates a fundamental misunderstanding of his values so profound it borders on psychological delusion. These people built entire parasitic careers on proximity to royalty, mistaking professional access for personal loyalty, and now they're furious that Harry had the nerve to recognize them for what they actually were. Not friends, not confidants, but vultures feeding off his life story. The fact that they expected him to sacrifice his family's well-being to maintain their cozy arrangement reveals just how sick and twisted their worldview really is. They literally cannot fathom that a human being would choose love and protection over maintaining relationships with people who profit from his pain. The uncomfortable truth behind the obsession, what makes Nikkhah's relentless campaign against Harry particularly disturbing, is the unspoken subtext that occasionally bubbles to the surface. One royal correspondent actually admitted to harbouring a personal crush on Harry, revealing the romantic disappointment that festers beneath the veneer of professional criticism. This confession exposes how personal attraction fundamentally clouded professional judgment, transforming what should be objective reporting into something far more vindictive and pathologically personal. Meghan becomes the convenient scapegoat for this disappointment, the woman who stole Harry away, the target onto whom all that scorned affection can be redirected as socially acceptable criticism. The resentment of being rejected, not even actively rejected, but simply never considered in the first place, in favour of Harry's marriage, manifests as this endless obsessive need to punish him for the crime of choosing his own wife and child over the parasocial relationships these correspondents had constructed in their heads. They genuinely expected Harry would choose them, choose the press, choose their validation over his own family. And that's the sickness at the core of this whole deranged dynamic. The inability to accept that he didn't even look in their direction, that he never would, and that keeping his interview as a profile picture won't change the fact that he's moved on while they remain pathetically, vindictively stuck. The psychology of unreciprocated access. What we're witnessing here is a textbook display of someone who fundamentally cannot process rejection, not romantic rejection necessarily, but the rejection of their assumed relevance in someone's life. Nikkhah exhibits all the hallmarks, the relentless public criticism that serves as a transparent outlet for deeply personal hurt, the need to rewrite someone else's narrative because accepting their actual choices would mean acknowledging her own diminished role, the years-long emotional investment that persists long after any professional relationship has dissolved into memory. She keeps that profile picture like a trophy from a war she's still fighting in her head, a visual reminder of when she had access, when she mattered, when Harry would sit across from her and answer her questions. That he chose his wife and child over maintaining relationships with people who saw him as content rather than as a human being. That's the unforgivable sin. And so the cycle continues. Trash him daily, gaslight him about his own lived experience, maintain the performance of authority over his inner life. All while clutching that photograph like evidence of a connection that, in her mind, he had no right to sever. When professional boundaries dissolve into personal obsession, the relentless nature of Roya Nikkhah's coverage of Harry reveals something far more troubling than robust journalism. It exposes the toxic underbelly of criticism that has curdled into something deeply personal. What we're witnessing isn't professional critique. It's a vendetta dressed up in editorial legitimacy, a daily barrage of gaslighting where she presumes to know his thoughts, feelings and motivations better than he does himself. The irony is almost too rich. She keeps a profile picture of herself interviewing Harry, a digital shrine to access she once had, even as she systematically dismantles his credibility and dismisses his lived experience as fiction. This is the behaviour of someone who cannot accept that the subject of their fascination has moved on, who refuses to acknowledge that boundaries exist, and who demonstrates the kind of unhealthy attachment that would raise eyebrows in any other context. The revelation that some in her circles admitted to harbouring crushes on Harry only confirms what the obsessive coverage already suggested. These aren't journalists scorned by a lack of access, they're admirers scorned by romantic indifference, furious that Harry chose his wife and child over their manufactured intimacy. The entitlement is staggering. They genuinely believed he would prioritise their attention over his own family, and his refusal to play along has transformed professional disappointment into something far more pathological.